In this week's content, I usually start off with a hook, but today I wanted to let you know that I did have my child Atticus. He's laying here right in my arms as I'm recording, hashtag mom life. So if you hear noises, if I have to edit a lot, we're just gonna go with it because I still have really important things to tell you and I'm not gonna stop. Um, and Atticus is just gonna join us now. So. With that being said, let's go ahead and start. So, I still remember the day I was in my kitchen hanging out with my husband while he was making dinner. We were talking about our days when I just completely zoned out. I hadn't heard a word he said, and honestly, I was just so emotionally and mentally exhausted. This often happened because I was so emotionally drained from work that I felt like I had nothing else to give at home. In fact, I would often be found zoning out in my car in the driveway for a couple of minutes before I came in to talk to him, just because I felt so mentally exhausted. He got frustrated at this situation because I wasn't listening, and this was a time that I knew something had to change because I wasn't being the wife that I wanted to be, and I knew that my work was bleeding into my relationships and it wasn't healthy. So I knew something had to change, and there had to be a better way than to work myself to the ground. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So, with that being said, let's dive in.
Hey, teacher bestie. My name's Helena, and I'm the creator of the Present Teacher Podcast. I'm a first year teacher coach, and in this podcast, you are going to learn everything from simple, actionable classroom management, social emotional learning, and teacher wellness strategies. You know that impact you want to make in the classroom? Well, we're going to make it happen here.
So there's this common myth that it's impossible to have balance as a teacher, and I believed that for the longest time, especially after one of my coworkers who was next door to me made a comment about another teacher down the hallway who was leaving at contract time consistently with her husband. And what happened was this teacher, she left at contract time with her husband, and I was watching them leave, and I was admiring them, to be honest. I was wondering, how do they do it? How can I do it? And that's when this coworker came out and said, clearly they don't care about their students like we do. And this teacher, my coworker, she was constantly staying till like 6 p.m. every night. And it's in that moment that I learned that in order to be liked and considered a good teacher, you had to work hard and work long hours. And that's when I learned good teachers work themselves to the ground for their students and the well-being of their students, or they're going to get judged by others. And during childhood in general, I was a high achiever who always received praise from how hard I worked. If I got straight A's, I was praised for it. If I was a B or C student, I didn't really get noticed. And I felt guilty for resting. Resting was something that I felt guilty about. And I felt guilty for making things easy. I have this weird ability to be able to see systems and want to tweak them, if that makes sense. So, growing up, a great example of this is in school. I was a great student not because I would memorize the content, but because I could look at a textbook and just automatically know what's going to be on the test. So, I would just, you know, memorize that short term answers essentially and score really well on assignments. So I'm able to see those patterns really easily. And I felt guilty for it and for making things easy and finding ways to make my day easier. Another example is in college. I had a lot of online courses for my master's program. So instead of working from the most recent or the assignment that's due the soonest, I would work backwards because they were all unlocked. So I would work on the final first all the way up to the assignment that was due next week. That way I could finish the entire course in a week. And that's just how my mind works. So, anyways, I felt guilty about this. I felt guilty for making things easy and just having that one up, I guess, or that ability because I felt like I was cheating the system. But something happened when I let teaching be easier. When I started letting teaching be easier and I started working with systems, things changed. I started loving my job again. And I started showing up with a passion, and I was able to actually show up present in the moment with my students. Before, I would disassociate often. I would, think about my prep and all the things I had to do, and, I wouldn't be there in the moment, actually there with my students while I was teaching them. And once I shifted that from, burnout to systems, I was excited to help others, and I was no longer emotionally or physically drained anymore. I was coming home with energy to be not only mindful in the classroom, but mindful in my life again. And that's when I realized it's not true. That the whole myth that it's impossible to have balance as a teacher, that's completely untrue. So now that we talked about pretty much how that's completely untrue, let's talk about three lessons from my book, That New Teacher Next Door, that goes along with this. And that is the first one, how to come up with my own version of a good teacher. So instead of listening to society standards of, in order to be a good teacher, you have to work yourself to the ground, or, you have to work long hours, sacrifice your personal life. If nobody could be mad at you, if you could pretend that you didn't listen to society, what would your definition of a good teacher be? What would that look like? And then is it by the amount of work I make, or is it by the impact I make? And for me, when I asked myself this question, um, oh my God, a talker. When I asked myself this question, it wasn't by the amount of hours I worked, it was by the impact I was able to make on a daily basis. So, with that being said, the second thing is I had to come up with my own version of balance. So, for me, this was completely different, and it could be different for you too. But in chapter one, we talk about aligned action. So, what that is that things that feel great to you or are aligned. So, if you really want to try strategy, that's a good indicator that it might be right for you. Whereas, if you listen to the shoulds and supposed tos, that's a good indicator that you're acting out of alignment, and instead you're acting from a place of guilt and shame. And I had to discover my own balance between this, and it looked like getting everything done in my workday and staying 1 to 2 weeks planned out in advance. I've talked about this online, and I've had a lot of backlash from other teachers who say that's a terrible way of teaching, that's a waste of time. I plan the day of, and I'm still a great teacher. And I'm not saying that your way is right and my way is wrong, or vice versa. You just have to figure out what the balance is for you. And for me, that looked like planning 1 to 2 weeks out at a time and tweaking as I went instead of starting from scratch every week or every day. I did daily planning, and it was exhausting. And like I said, other teachers might plan the day of, and that might work for them. You might plan the week of, 2 weeks ahead, whatever works for you. But it doesn't matter. But if no one could be mad at you, what do you want to do? What would feel good to you? What would feel like, that feels like freedom, that feels ease? For me, having that space to be 1 to 2 weeks out really gave me some breathing room, because when I planned the day of, I felt like I was on a never-ending hamster wheel of writing a to-do list of 30 things, getting it done by the end of that day, and then having to redo it the next day. And it was just exhausting. The third lesson I had to learn, which was how to give myself permission to let things be easy. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to call myself out here. This is something that I'm learning right now in my business as I'm transitioning from an extended maternity leave and spending time with Addie and being a full-time business owner and coaching and all that, is how to give myself permission to let things be easy. And this is a hard lesson that I'm going to keep coming back to in different areas of my life, but I felt shame because who am I to let teaching be easy when so many struggle out there, when so many teachers out there are having a hard time? And here's the thing, teaching is supposed to be easy. I'm going to say that again. Teaching is supposed to be easy, because when you work from alignment, it gets to be easier. It gets to be easier because you're worthy. And when it's easier, you can create a deeper impact. When I was able to figure out a balance of 1 to 2 weeks out and work from that balance, I was able to show up more deeply and actually see some areas that I probably would have missed if I was planning the day of. I could see the holes in my students' learning where I need to pull them to pre-teach or reteach a lesson. I could see where their background knowledge might hinder their comprehension of the lesson. I was able to see the skills that maybe they were strong at and I could challenge them. And I could see the students who were probably struggling a lot more in their home life than I was when I was just barely surviving. And I was able to pull those students and hold emotional space for them because I wasn't emotionally stretched out myself. So aligned means easier, and you were not put here to struggle. When you work in something that you love and your passion, you're meant to do, it doesn't require a struggle. Society will tell you it does, but it doesn't have to. I have helped other teachers, not only my story of letting teaching be easy and having time to start a business and share my stuff online, but I've helped other teachers create that freedom too. And it's hard to put into words the difference between working from a frantic state because society says teaching has to be hard, and then working from a place of ease and flow and fun. Teaching gets to be fun. It gets to be exciting. It gets to be like one big experiment where you try new things and you learn about yourself and you get better with time. So, as a wrap up, as a quick recap, it's impossible to have balance as a teacher. That's completely untrue. Other teachers do it. You can too. If you're jealous or if you see somebody online or down the hallway like I did all those years ago, and you're like, you kind of have that jealousy thought, that's proof of what's possible. That's proof that that's something that you want and you were meant to have. Instead of being jealous, recognize the jealousy. Don't judge yourself for it and say, I get to have that too. And then work towards it. That's just showing you what you're meant to have and that that's something you secretly want. And then 3 mindset shifts from my book about letting teaching be easy. The first one is I had to come up with my own version of a good teacher. I had to let go of society's norms of working long hours because the reality is I work a lot less and I did work a lot less, but I made such a deeper impact when I did that. And it's going to be different for everyone, but it doesn't have to be the requirement of a good teacher. You get to decide that. We get to say, watch me to society and make our own definition of what teaching means for us. And then I had to come up with my own version of balance. Some teachers, like I said, it's the day of, it's the day before, it's the week of, it's the 2 weeks out, whatever works for you. There's no one right or wrong. The only wrong way to do it is to listen to the shoulds and have tos and stop listening to yourself because honestly, you know yourself better than anyone else. And then the third thing, I had to give myself permission of letting it be easy. Again, something I'm personally struggling with, having to relearn. I don't like the word struggling. Something I'm relearning in my life right now in this transition from full-time teacher to extended maternity leave and working on my business and being a full-time mom. Uh, just letting it be easy and knowing that easy isn't cheating. Easy is alignment. I'm going to say that again because I needed to hear that. Easy isn't cheating. Easy means alignment. So, thank you so much for joining me for this week's content. Sorry about the baby babbles, but you know what? I kind of love the season I'm in right now. So here's some next steps if you want to dive into more. First off, my book, That New Teacher Next Door, is being released so soon, and I'm so incredibly excited. Plus, I'm doing a 3-day training as a bonus and a thank you to anyone who purchases or gets access to that book. So make sure to check out the description and the link down below. And if I've already released it, don't worry, you'll get access to the replays. And the second thing is my prep guide. If you're a teacher who's wondering, how do I get more done in less time? How do I make a deeper impact without working as much? Make sure to check out that prep guide because it has my top 10 strategies to achieve that. And the final step, if you want more practical behind the scenes, everything, and I mean everything from classroom management, grading, communication, you want it all. You want to see how I run my classroom, you want to see my systems, then make sure to check out the Present Teacher Circle because that's really my one-stop shop for everything in one spot. And what I love about it is it's organized. So month 1 is classroom management, month 2, communication, so on and so forth. But you can focus on what works best for you. It's all unlocked at once. So let's say you were really wanting to work on communication right now, you can jump to that module. All right, that wraps everything. Thank you so much for joining me. As always, remember we are stronger together, and I will see you in the next one, Teacher Bestie. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. I hope that you were able to take away some value that will help you thrive inside and out of the classroom. It would mean the world to me if you could take 5 seconds right now and leave a review on this podcast. And if you found this podcast especially helpful, make sure to take a screenshot of this episode right now and tag me on your socials to let me know you're listening. As always, remember that we are stronger together with all the love in the world. Helena, aka the Present Teacher. See you next time, Teacher Bestie.